has always been the favorite time of day for poets. It is consistently led dusk by 3 sonnets to 1. It is associated in the poetic mind with clear running streams, fresh dew on virgin grass. The dark creatures of the night have come to rest as the first light appears. It is a time of waiting for the day to begin. But dawn in the city is a grayer thing. It means 1 hour till the alarm goes off, shaving with yesterday's blade, several million necks struggling into their white collars. It is the transition from a wider land of uninterpreted dreams to the daily world of the counter and the desk and the filing cabinet. Consider, for example, Herbert Konish, age 41, employed at the Fifth Avenue branch of the brokerage firm of Little and Hersholt, married, owner of a one-family house on Kingsbridge Avenue, the Bronx. Construction, stucco on concrete, all copper plumbing. When interviewed for the Interoffice newspaper, he reported his outside interests as television and raising African violets. In his 25 exemplary years, Mr. Konish has been late for work only once, in 1937, when signal trouble on the IRT subway delayed the Van Cortlandt Express for 40 minutes. He has been for some years the example pointed out to younger members of the firm as a guide for proper dress. Neat, well-groomed, quietly conservative, and reassuring. In the brokerage office of Little and Hersholt, irregularity, a double life, the offbeat and the unexplained are frowned on. And so Herbert Konish is, of course, the ideal employee.
Though it's the first time I have told you over and over about those young hoodlums hanging around under my window plotting.
Now, look, Mrs. Hagerson, I tried to explain to you that this building of yours has a very peculiar kind of stoop. They like to hang around to play stoop ball.
Oh, and did you ever do anything about those baby carriages in front of the supermarket? You can't walk past them without stepping into the gutter. I suppose they paid for protection.
The babies?
The supermarket. I don't think I like your attitude. You're on civil service, you know.
I know, Mrs. Hagerson, but every week you come in... Oh, look, Mrs. Hagerson, suppose you tell your problems to Detective Flinter. He's in charge of precinct relations this week. Oh, Adam! Adam, Mrs. Hagerson here has something very important, and I told her that you would give her your own personal attention.
But Frank,
Well, I gotta go solve something. Now, don't you worry, Mrs. Hagerson. You're in very good hands. Detective Flint is one of our best.
Yes, Mrs. Hagerson.
Well, now, I have always been a very easy woman to get along with, and I mind my own business. But There it is. St. Alfred's Parish Mission. You saw the undesirables go in there and out all day. They're addicts. I am sure they're all addicts.
Oh, really?
And worse.
Really?
Oh, look, there. Look, that's him. That's that Dr. Ripple. You see? He gave him money. Well, aren't you going to do something about it?
About what?
Well, you don't give money to a man like that for nothing. What I want to know is, what are they doing for him? It's some kind of racket.
It's a mission house. They're all over the city.
Well, have they got a license?
A license for what?
Well, how should I know? You're the policeman. Well, for one thing, he has them sleeping there overnight.
Oh? Oh, well, if he's running a lodging house, it should be registered. All right, I'll go and talk to him. Alone.
You take it from me. When you see someone trying to give away money and trying to make out he's so good, it's got to be a racket.
You want something?
I want to see Dr. Ripple.
He's busy.
I'll wait. It's all right, Morris. I'll see the gentleman now. Would you get some hot soup for Mr. Kachatikian? Hello. Yes, sir? I'm Adam Flint. How do you do? I'm George Ripple. How do you do? Doctor, you in charge of this mission here? Yes. Well, I'm a police officer from the precinct. Oh, dear, I do hope none of our men has gotten into any trouble. No, it's nothing like that. Actually, it's just a little embarrassing. You see, Doctor, we have what we call crank squeals. That's a complaint. Oh? And there's this particular woman, why, she comes in and sees us at least once a week. As a matter of fact, she even writes to the city departments. Now, if you are soliciting funds here, or if you're running a lodging house...
We don't solicit funds. St. Alfred's is a fairly wealthy parish, as you know. And I make up all deficits personally.
Well, I just want to make sure you're covered. You see, if you're running a lodging house here, now you have to be registered with the police department.
But we don't charge. The men are guests of the parish.
Oh, I see. Well, gee, I'm not quite sure now just how that regulation is worded. I tell you what, Doctor, I can check on the housing regulation law, and then I'll let you know about it.
Would you do that? We'd be most grateful.
You haven't been here very long, have you, Doctor? I remember when this place used to be a hardware store.
The owners don't charge us much, so when a commercial tenant comes along, we move. I sometimes wonder how the men find us. But there is a need. There is a need.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
Of course, we can't do as much as the city welfare departments or the big private agencies, but we serve as a sort of first aid station. We tell the men where to go for further help. And then there are the little things, a quarter for a haircut at the tonsorial college over on Chatham Square, or a little something to eat now, without waiting, filling in forms.
You give them money?
Car fare to the state employment agencies or the clinics. Subway tokens. We find it reduces temptation. Very few bars will sell a drink for a subway token.
And you support this personally?
Well, some of the vestry don't see eye to eye with me. I find it a refreshing change. I sometimes wonder, who is closer to Christ's mercy? My well-fed, well-tailored congregation, or some of these poor devils who haven't been inside a church since they were children?
Well, Doctor, I'm not going to keep you any longer. I'll check that lodging house regulation for you, and I'll let you know.
Thank you very much.
Doctor, I'd like to give you something. Oh, for the mission.
No, I couldn't accept.
You know, Doctor, I really envy people like you. You don't have to go through life suspecting everybody. You don't have to always be looking for something rotten underneath. Please.
Each man has only one life. We need policemen as well as... Thank you, Mr. Flint. This has been most interesting.
Thank you, Doctor. I really enjoyed meeting you.
What did he want, Dr. Ripple?
Oh, nothing.
Looks like a cop.
Close the door. Where were you raised, in a barn? Adam, I've got 4 reports here on breaking and entering. Well, just what have you got that's more important than breaking and entering?
I don't know, Mike. I can't find him.
Who?
George Ripple.
What are you talking about?
It's a crank squeal from the Hagerson woman. I told Adam it was a waste of
No,
time.
Frank. I can't find him. I checked the lodging house regulation for him, but I can't reach him on the phone. They don't have one at the mission. So I called St. Alfred's Parish, and they never heard of him.
Well, maybe you called the wrong St. Alfred's.
No, he's Episcopal, and there's only one Episcopal St. Alfred's Parish. It's in Brooklyn. They never heard of him. Oh, then I called Worldwide Board of Churches, and they had heard of a George Ripple.
Well, there you are.
He was a minister in 1850 in Boston, a great friend of Ralph Waldo Emerson.
What's it smell like? Charity racket?
Maybe.
The Hagerson woman came in last week, Mike, complaining about a supermarket. She's a crank.
You never can tell. Still may turn out to be a good squeal. You remember the guy that locked fenders with the squad car? Turned out there was a body in the trunk, right? Check downtown and see if this guy's got a record. Go back and take another look. If there's anything out of line with this, what's his name again?
Ripple, George Ripple.
Let's find out, huh?
Right.
Yes, sir.
Now, you listen to me. You ain't going to find a man like him in this old town. I seen him talk to some drunk who's tagged in here. Dr. Ripple just talked to him. He listened, and maybe a couple of days, this bum was on his feet. I seen it.
Oh, I'm sure he does very
Oh,
fine
you
work.
can talk about your Dr. Schweitzer and everything in Africa, but I tell you, he's a Dr. Schweitzer right here on 3rd Avenue. You ask anybody.
Adam.
Look, all we want to do is talk to him, to tell him that he's all right, that he does not have to register this place as a lodging house. That's all.
Yeah, well, he ain't going to be in for a couple of weeks. He's got some kind of a some kind of a ministers' conference in Cincinnati.
Well, did he leave a phone number in the event of an emergency?
You gave Dr. Ripple a $5 bill for the mission, didn't you?
Yes, that's right, I did.
Okay. Well, some bum came in here a couple of months ago, kept on having fits or something. Now, Dr. Ripple give me a number to call in case of emergency. I wrote it down somewheres, unless somebody's washed it off.
A victim of foreign time and space.
The trouble with you fellows is that you're in this world, but you're not of it.
Jack, when you turned back, you moved your head.
Look,
Jack!
you're a poet. Well, I'm a poet, too. I ask you, is there any harm in my also working at the Armstadt bookstore?
It's a question of total commitment.
Where's your Basil? Or maybe Chervil, if you haven't got
Big
Basil.
food jars on the shelf.
Melville. What about Melville? He worked at the custom house, yet he still wrote Moby Dick. And Chekhov was a doctor. Go ahead. What about Chekhov?
I'm talking about today. There's no part-time artist today.
Romanticism.
You've got to have total commitment.
19th century romanticism.
Listen, you can't be 1/3 of a poet. There's no time for success or security or what people think or sentimental humanitarianism. You've got to be a poet when you get up in the morning and brush your teeth. You've got to be a poet in the subways or making love.
Wait, quiet,
I'm
please.
sorry. You
Dr. Ripple. No, there isn't any Dr. Ripple here. He left this number? Esther, are you expecting a Dr. Ripple? Who?
I'll take it. Hello. Who is this, please? You have the wrong number.
Jack, I'm getting the eyes, please.
Where's your golly?
Esther, I've got to get out.
What do you mean? Herman's making Uncle
I've got to get out.
See, Lord Byron, he's going to swim the Hellespont.
I'll get in touch.
Well, Esther, please, the garlic.
In the drawer. Jack, what's happened? Where are you going?
I don't know. I'll keep in touch.
Is it anything I've done? What is it?
It's nothing. Here, take this. I'll send you more money for the rent. And if the baby's cold doesn't get any better, why, take her to the clinic.
I don't understand. Please.
Francois Villon of Hell's Kitchen, our own Edgar Allan Poe.
Leave him alone.
I can't find any garlic.
Shut
out, will you? Jack!
It's all right. Don't worry. Sometimes I just have to get out.
Jack!
Esther, sweetheart, there is no garlic in that drawer. Now, where's the garlic?
Oh, there's garlic powder.
Powder? Garlic powder?
That's all I've got left. You have to settle for what you can get.
Phone number's listed under an Esther Lindo. You know, I'm positive that was Dr. Ripple's voice. Oh, and incidentally, there's no ecumenical conference in Cincinnati.
There isn't any what, where?
Religious conference, Mike. That's where he said he was going.
What are we looking for this guy for? Mike, you gonna send the whole precinct out on a snipe hunt just because
I'll
this old
decide
crank...
who hunts what snipe. There's gotta be a racket here.
Well, I'm not sure, Mike, but I think he's in trouble.
Adam's got a vested interest in him. He gave him $5 towards the good works.
Well, I am worried about him. The man seems sort of saintly.
Probably got a record in 5 states. All right, you got a lead. Get going. See what this Ripple's trying to pull.
Yeah.
Hello. You're early. Anything wrong?
No, we finished the accounts early.
Oh, you never got home this early on Wednesdays. I think after all these years, they could give the night work to one of the younger men. You want some?
What is it?
Low-calorie gelatin, black raspberry.
A spoonful.
Skim?
No.
I had to have the repairman in today for the washer. The overflow valve.
He was here last week.
That was for the in valve. This was for the out. Doris called. She and George can't make it on the 5th.
What's 5th?
Oh, don't you remember? We were going to entertain.
That's right. What'd you do, make it another time?
Oh, it's hard to plan around your night work. I told her I'd call her back. You want to watch the Late Show tonight?
No, I'm too tired.
It's all that routine work. You need a change. I told it to Doris. Herbert needs a change.
Well, what's wrong with routine? You know, all this business about conformity and the organization man and everything, it's just mere childishness. Man has a job, a nice house, a nice wife. What more does he need in one lifetime?
I guess so. Want some more? There's plenty left.
You know, that's not bad for low-calorie gelatin.
Esther, it's getting cold.
I don't know anyone named Dr. Ripple. Look, I'm having people here for dinner.
I'm sorry. You see, it wasn't 30 minutes ago that somebody answered the telephone.
I don't know. Gloria, you answered the phone when that crazy call came. Sure, but it was the wrong number.
No, I don't mean that. I mean the man. See, there was also a man on the phone.
How do you know? What are you, tapping my telephone or something? Listen, there's a law about that. You've got no
you see,
right...
I was the one who placed the call. That's how I know. Now, who was the man that talked to me on the phone?
Must have been Jack.
Well, is he here?
No,
What's Jack's last name?
that's it. Byron Jack. Why?
Have you got a photograph of him?
No.
Well, a sketch, perhaps?
Oh, I'm doing a portrait on the easel.
Fine. Can we see it?
I haven't got the eyes exactly.
I can see that. It's close. Very close.
Well, no, Mrs. Lindahl. Actually, I'm afraid for our purposes, we'd have to have something just a little bit more academic. How long have you known Mr. Jack?
He's a good friend.
Is that all?
You get out of here. I'm not going to answer any more of your questions.
Now, just take it easy, Mrs. Lindahl. Do you have any idea where we can get in touch with Mr. Jack?
No,
Well, he was here this evening. Do you know where he went?
I don't know.
Has he ever mentioned the name Ripple to you?
No,
This, Jack, does he live here?
no. Well, he pays the rent.
Oh,
There's nothing wrong with that.
it's none of my business, lady.
He has to have a place to meet people.
Sure.
Now, you look here. My husband's name was Frank Lindahl. He deserted 6 weeks before the baby was born. You can check that out in domestic relations court. There's a warrant out for him.
Well, I'm sure that Detective Arcaro didn't mean to imply that.
You think because I'm a painter that I behave like something out of a cheap drugstore novel.
Lady, I didn't mean a thing.
Jack is a poet. He's a fine man. I hadn't had anything to eat for 3 days when I met him. He offered to pay the rent here. He said he wanted to have a place to come and work, to read poems to people. What's so wrong about that?
Well, how often would you say he comes here?
Once or twice a week, that's all.
So you really don't know who he is, or very much about this man?
I know all I have to know about him. Here, you want to know about Jack? You'll find it here. That's all I know about him. A free soul. A protest against the tyranny of the time clock, the mortgage, the whole automated, self-destructive culture.
May I? Are these his poems?
Those are the originals. He gave them to me after I typed up some copies.
I wonder if I could borrow these
Why?
to read them.
You?
Mrs. Lindahl, I think you're being a little prejudiced. Just because I'm a police officer doesn't mean I don't read poetry. I guess I'm a little old-fashioned. Actually, I lean toward Emily Dickinson. However, I made an exception for early T.S. Eliot. I'll return these to you. Oh, if you hear from Mr. Jack, will you have him call me at the precinct? My name is Adam Flint. Same guy? Looks like Dr. Ripple writes a little poetry in his spare time.
Among other things, you gonna check Ripple's fingerprints with this fella Jack's?
I suppose I could. I never thought of that.
Why'd you take the poems for?
To read. Well, I want to see the protests of the free soul against the tyranny of the time clock. Now, therefore, and forever, in the inelastic elegies of elephantine scrutiny, hear me as I trumpet travesties. Transvestite tear sheets from flannel funnels. Oh, boy.
What's the matter?
Flannel funnels.
Yeah, I think it's a good image.
Of what? You know, this is an oddball way to spend your morning off with transvestite tear sheets.
Don't you dig?
Honey, I don't even scratch. What's this supposed to be about?
Madison Avenue, the usual.
And maybe I'm just a little unfashionable, but to me, this ain't poetry.
So what's poetry?
What's poetry? I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell. They'd banish us, you know. How dreary to be somebody. How public, like a frog, to tell your name the livelong day to an admiring bog. Now that's poetry.
Just because you wrote your thesis on Emily Dickinson is no reason to stay fixated in the 19th century. Buy me one of those. Now, take this play I'm rehearsing.
Avant-garde again?
It's about the difficulty of communication, so no one speaks to anyone else. First scene is just heavy breathing.
Oh, baby. Why don't you get into something good, like by Miller or Inns, so I can at least hear you act in connected sentences?
Listen, I was going to be in Shakespeare in the Park, but they said I had a New York accent. No. I'll have the special, please. The caramel peppermint crumb.
Caramel peppermint crumb. Honey, you even eat avant-garde ice cream. You know, I wonder why this guy pretends to be a saint.
It could be worse, after all. He could pretend to be Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, but I wonder what's behind it all. Is it fraud, or is it some kind of a con game? Or is it mental illness? I sure wish I could get hold of him before... I don't even know before what.
He hasn't gone back to that mission?
No. And he left the loft just as soon as I called. I wonder why he's afraid of policemen, unless there's some good reason.
What's that?
One of the poems.
You're looking at the wrong side.
I know. There's a bug.
Where's the bug?
No, honey, I mean the label put on by the Typographers Union. You see, they call it a bug. There's a number on it. Now, this sheet of paper's been torn off at the top. Evidently, there was something printed on it, a letterhead or maybe a form.
Would that be enough to identify it?
I could find out. Below me, Atlas stubs his toe, a brazen sufferer from housemaid's knee, bearing his ovoid cross upon his neck. This guy sure has a weird imagination.
That's not imagination. That's 5th Avenue and 51st Street. You know that statue of Atlas at Rockefeller Center?
Across the street from St. Pat's.
Well, it does look like he has housemaid's knee.
Well, at least this narrows it down.
What's the matter?
Is that any good?
Mm-hmm.
Let me have a bite. Very bad. We've got 22 officers in this area. You take these.
Suppose if Mrs. Hagerson came in next time and complained about this flying saucer landed on her fire escape and messed up her philodendron, you figure Parker would send us out looking for little green men?
He might. Now, that piece of paper was a customer's report form. They use them in brokers' offices. Looks like our man might be monkeying around with high finance.
Look, it went as high as 13.7. It's 20.19 now. I'll give $5 to a half if it don't go higher than 24.
I'll take that.
You're a sucker. Your kid don't have a chance with Streamer.
Oh, yeah? He was Putnam University champion.
Well, I seen Streamer play lunch hours maybe a year, and wise guys keep coming in here trying to hustle him. It's like an annuity.
I still say Si could take him.
Put up or shut up before he gets a shoot.
I already did. $5 to a half.
No. No, I didn't think so. No, I've never heard of him.
You've never employed anyone by that name?
It'd be in the file.
Well, could he be a building employee? Somebody that perhaps has access to your stationery?
Well, you'd have to check that with the building management.
What about Ripple, a Dr. George Ripple?
Oh, that's a little more familiar. I think Ripple. I seem to recall, I think he has an account here. Ah, yes, Ripple. George Ripple. Yes, he has an account.
Now, does this mean he has investments?
Oh, yes, this is our active file.
Do you remember him? Do you know what he looks like?
No, as a matter of fact, that account's handled by Mr. Konish. He'd have the details.
Fine. May I speak with him?
Of course. Mr. Flint, you couldn't tell me what this is all about. I mean, naturally, we're anxious to avoid trouble, and...
No, at this moment, it's just routine.
Oh, I see. Well, let's see if Mr. Konish can help you then. We always try to have one representative handle each account. It's the personal touch in investing. Mr. Konish, I suppose he just stepped out. If you'll just wait, Mr. Flint, I'm sure Mr. Konish knows everything there is about the Ripple account.
Thank you very much.
I don't understand it at all. Konish does take long lunch hours, but never...
Look, is there anybody else I can get this information from?
No, as a matter of fact, I asked around. Mr. Konish handles that account exclusively. Nobody else knows anything about it. Of course, Mr. Konish pretty well sets his own hours. He's a senior employee. Perhaps he could call you tomorrow.
I'd like to find out if he has any information on Mr. Ripple. Could you give me his home address?
Well, if it's that urgent. Give this gentleman Mr. Konish's address. Collect everything in the files on the Ripple account. And ask Mr. Farish from auditing to drop into my office for a moment. Under the circumstances, perhaps I'd better look into it. From our point of view.
This is your husband?
Of course, that was taken a few years ago.
It's very interesting. Are you expecting him home soon?
Well, he usually doesn't come home till late on Mondays. He has to work late, and then he has a club meeting. Can I help you?
Well, we're inquiring about one of his accounts. Dr. Ripple. Dr. George Ripple?
Oh, no. Herbert doesn't talk about the office. He likes to keep his life separate, you know.
He must be away from home a great deal.
Well, I suppose so. 3 or 4 nights a week. There's a lot of late evening work and the club, and he takes a physical fitness course at the Y.
You probably don't know very much about his work or his hobbies.
No, I don't see why I should. All those articles about togetherness, I think that can be overdone, don't you?
Well, maybe.
My sister's always saying to me, Marilyn, how can you stand it? Herbert being away so much, I mean. I don't mind, really. When he comes home, he's so glad to be here. He's really a very remarkable husband.
I'm sure he must be. Well, Mrs. Konish, you have my number.
I wrote it down. I do hope this Dr. Ripple hasn't done anything to get himself in trouble.
Well, I don't know. Actually, we were hoping Mr. Konish could tell us all about it.
Well?
Mr. Konish isn't in.
Did you find out anything? What does that mean?
Ripple, Jack, Konish.
Same guy?
There was a photograph.
Well, what are you going to do?
Well, I guess we better call in. And we'll hang around here and pick him up when he comes home. If he comes home.
No. No, not yet. Lieutenant, I've had our auditor go over the accounts 4 times. We just haven't found it yet. Huh? Well, it's got to be there somewhere.
All right. I'll be at the same number. Nothing yet. Why'd you turn up at the mission?
If there's a racket, nobody in the neighborhood ever suspected it. Dr. Ripple and the mission are well known to the welfare department.
Yeah?
They speak very highly of him. Oh, and there's never been a record of anybody ever being solicited for money. So that angle's out.
Narcotics, maybe? Receiving stolen goods? What about the jack end of it? Bigamy?
He's not married to the Lindahl woman. I doubt if you could make out a case of common law relationship.
Nobody can cover his tracks that good. There's got to be some evidence. We got a man here living 3 lives, 3, simultaneously. And I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 men on the job, and none of them been able to turn up an angle. Adam, go back up to the Bronx and pick up that photograph.
It's 1 o'clock in the morning.
Don't tell me what time it is. I was up walking my dog at 6 o'clock this morning. I'll go back up the Bronx, pick up that photograph, and I want 100 copies made of it.
Okay. I'll have to get down to the lab, however, and fill out the requisition slip. Oh, what are we booking him on?
How would I know? Questioning in the disappearance of Ripple.
But he is Ripple.
That's a good reason to question him. Wait. Make it suspicion of embezzlement. Yeah?
Excuse me, Lieutenant. You got a minute, Adam?
He's busy. What do you mean, busting in here like this?
There's a man in here asking for Detective Flint.
He's busy. What does he want?
He wouldn't say. He just wanted to see Detective Flint.
Hello, Mr. Flint. I'm Herbert Konish. I'd like to give myself up.
Now tell us, what made you suddenly decide to surrender?
Well, I was out on the farm thinking...
What farm?
My farm.
You got a farm? Where?
Staten Island.
They still got farms in Staten Island?
Oh, yes, we grow lettuce, some celery.
You're a farmer, too?
Well, I don't get out there as often as I'd like. There's a Polish couple, the Slazinskas. They farm it on shares. You know, it's very peaceful on Staten Island. It's almost like Walden Pond.
Like where?
Walden Pond, Mike. That's where Thoreau built himself a cabin for $27 back in 1854.
Wait a minute. Let's not get sidetracked. Frank, call the precinct in Staten Island and check up on that farm. Now, what name were you using out there?
Emerson. R.W. Emerson.
Now, Mr. Emerson, I mean Mr. Konish, you were saying why you came here.
Oh, well, Detective Flint was getting closer and closer. First the mission, and then that call to the apartment at Esther's. And my office, my home. I figured I was about all through.
So, you're prepared to make a full confession?
I suppose so.
Well?
Well, it's very difficult to know where to begin.
Well, let's start with the money.
What money?
The money in the Ripple account at Little and Herschel.
Oh, that. Well, that was to support the mission. We made several fortunate investments in growth stocks, and then when Sky High Power split 3 for 1, we made quite a
No. What was the angle? How were you making it?
Oh, that. Well, I bought and sold stocks in Dr. Ripple's name.
Well, where did you get the money to speculate in stocks?
I lent it to him.
You?
As Herbert Konish.
That's right. I borrowed on my life insurance, but he paid it back.
Who did?
Dr. Ripple. I paid it back to myself. With interest, we both made a profit. And then, of course, there was a little other money.
And where did that other money come from?
George's table tennis academy. You see, I played there during the lunch times. Under the name of Streamer.
He's Osler. Konish, stop running around in circles. You got 3, no, 4 names.
5, counting the ping pong player.
Frank! Now, people just don't go around doing things like that. What is it? Are you book short? Are you fooling around with some dame?
No.
Let's have it.
No, nothing like that. I just like to live life, that's all.
So do I. But one life at a time. Now, look, there's something rotten at the bottom of this. And we're going to stay with it until you're either booked in a cell or in the psycho ward at Bellevue for observation.
Well, I don't know what you want me to say.
Mr. Konish, you must admit it's a little unusual to keep 5 identities going at the same time.
I suppose you're right. I never thought of it that way. I didn't think I was doing anything wrong.
Why did you do it?
Well, I suppose it's because I married so young.
All right, Mr. Konish, let's go on.
Well, I married when I was 20 years old, and Marilyn was 18. That's Mrs. Konish.
Oh, yes, we've met.
Well, those first few years were very exciting. Getting started at Little and Hersholt, moving from apartment to apartment. Then I began to realize that I wasn't experimenting with life. Well, I'd never been anybody but Herbert Konish. I suppose I must have been very difficult to live with in those days. It even came to the point where I was going to give up Marilyn and the job and just start all over again.
Why didn't you?
Well, I couldn't do that. Marilyn was very dependent upon me.
Well, couldn't you have changed jobs without leaving home?
Well, that's just it. I didn't want to change. It was very interesting working at Little and Hersholt. It just wasn't enough.
And what did you do?
Well, the farm came first. I didn't want to tell Marilyn about it at first. I didn't think she'd understand. And then finally I realized I shouldn't tell her, because I'd just be Herbert Konish with a farm, and that wouldn't make any sense at all.
So you just kept on being R.W. Emerson on Staten Island?
Well, after that, they, Dr. Ripple, Jack, Streamer, just crept up on me.
You wouldn't by any chance be Judge Crater, too, would you?
No.
Now, couldn't you have done all of these things and still been Herbert Konish?
Oh, no. Take Jack. Now, there's a great deal of difference between being an accountant who writes poetry on the side and being a poet. You see, most people get up in the morning and they're the same as when they went to bed. They're prisoners in one life. They're locked inside. There's no freedom, no choice.
But didn't juggling those 5 lives tire you out?
Oh, no, that's just it. You see, you travel from one life to another, and each is different and challenging, and you never have a chance to get tired of a routine because you just escape into another routine.
Oh, Mr. Konish, now, if you had concentrated all of this energy into one life, don't you think you could have accomplished more?
I don't really think so. You see, I'm a very ordinary person. I just wanted to make the best out of 5 or 6 possible lives. Well, I suppose I should have known that I'd be caught up with eventually. I'll just have to accept what happens. I just hope Marilyn isn't hurt. Or Esther. Or Edra.
Who is Edra?
Mrs. Slazinska. She worries about me. Well, whatever it is, I'm ready.
Charlie, if it's something that can wait, I'd let it wait.
Well, would you rather you found something? Okay, thanks. That's Hanley at the brokerage office. Boy, is he sore.
Why?
Well, he spent all night going through his books. They couldn't find anything. Every nickel is accounted for. They think we owe Konish an apology for involving him in one of our wild goose chases. All right. What are we going to do with him? We got a guy with lies like an alley cat. He must spend a fortune in crosstown bus fares alone. He hasn't done anything wrong. He pays 5 income taxes, overpays them. You got us into this. What are we going to do with him now?
mean you're going to let me go?
Why not? You're just 4 or 5 law-abiding citizens, aren't you?
I'm sure you can understand why we felt we had to investigate.
Well, I'm grateful. I should feel lucky. But...
What's the matter?
Well, I can't help worrying about those men at the mission. And Esther Lindahl, she'll have to stop painting. And the Slazinskas. They'll never understand the Department of Agriculture regulations. I feel as if I were deserting them. And Marilyn, she'll be hurt. She'll think I tried to keep things from her. Well, I suppose it had to come out sometime. Thank you. I'm sorry to have caused you trouble.
Well, just a minute, Mr. Konish. I don't think you really understand. See, we didn't tell your company that you're Ripple. And there are no charges. I mean, you can just go. Nobody will ever know anything about this.
But aren't there reports, the newspapers?
You don't think I want the newspapers to know about this, do you? Not to mention the department. As far as we're concerned, we got a complaint from some crank about Dr. Ripple, and there was nothing to it. We're here to protect the people, not to interfere with law-abiding citizens like Dr. Ripple or Jack.
Or Mr. Emerson.
Or the ping pong player.
Adam, sign out a vehicle and take Mr. Konish home. With our apologies.
Did you ever want to be anything else? I mean, besides a policeman?
Well, when I was an adolescent, I thought I'd like to be a lay brother in a monastery. And you?
Oh, I wanted to be a professor of English literature at Harvard. Oh, we'd never make it. There's only one Herbert Konish.
There are 8 million stories in the naked city. This has been one of them.
Screen Gems film presentation from Columbia Pictures. Herbert B. Leonard, executive producer.